Contemplative experience or mystic experience is an experience of deep intimacy with indwelling God, God's Spirit. 1 Corinthians 3:16. Sensitive to this inner spirit's needs, contemplative silence and solitude. In solitude, we leave behind our concerns and convictions, our plans and projects, and enter into the presence of God, totally vulnerable, open, and receptive. Mystical consciousness of Jesus. Jesus' interiority and his personal intense experience with his Father is seen clearly in the Gospel. Matthew 14:23. After he had dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain by himself to pray. Mark 1:35. In the morning, while it was still very dark, he got up and went out to a deserted place, and there he prayed. It is St. John who best describes Jesus' mystical experience, how Jesus sank deep into the contemplative silence and how he sensed his inner mystical movements. Father was with him, Father was within him. John 14:10. Do you not believe that I am in Father, and the Father is in me? When Jesus addressed his Father, Abba, my Father, it's not just addressing a male category of the patriarchal culture, but it was an experience of his deepest intimacy. To Jesus, Father is full of mother sentiments. Like the son clings on to the feeding breast of the divine motherly Father. Jesus' consciousness of God is that of motherly Father and a fatherly mother. Within him, with him, beyond him, immanent and transcendent. Challenges. We, the consecrated, in rigid schedule, are caught up in routines. There is no time for reflections, for prayer, for exploring our own dreams and feelings. Our use or abuse of time slowly chokes the inner life. We break ourselves with meetings, discussions, deliberations, and our involvements in ministry. There is restlessness in our genes, and our mind jumps from one thought to the other. However, if solitude is cherished, it will unite us with the sacred at the core of our being, and we will bring that divine energy into our ministry. When we focus on interior silence, our ministry becomes an extension of that divine energy dwelling within us. Often in prayer, we give priority to external observances, rules and regulations, rites and rituals, even from the beginning of formation, which may make a person a perfect religious, Pharisees, scribes, high priest of Jesus' time. But spiritual life is built from within, not from outside. The external observances can be compared to a well, but spirituality is the source of the spring. John 7:37-38. Let the one who believes in me drink. As the scripture has said, out of the believer's heart shall flow rivers of living water. We say it in Ezekiel 47, water flowing from the temple. We have to enter into this sphere of spirituality. Spirituality is interiority, your inner quality, your inner original self. Our mystical intuitive consciousness. How do we develop a contemplative consciousness? Be still, know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. Prayer, contemplation is a way of life for us. All the time, everywhere, with a pure heart. Ephesians 6:18. Pray in the Spirit at all times, in every prayer and supplications. Our faith is not just a belief in Jesus, who lived more than 2,000 years ago, but Jesus Christ, who is Emmanuel, God, who is with us, within us, here and now. We are within His being, His spiritual reality. In Him we live and move and have our being. Acts 17:28. Our call is to continue to seek the divine in the depths of our being. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. Galatians 2:20. When we live in Christ, we are filled with the fullness of God. We become a new creation. When we bring our mystical experience and contemplative moments, our mission, our ministry, we offer God's energy, God's compassion to the world. Here, two streams interact in consecrated life: prophetic, mystical. Vita Consecrator states that true prophecy is born of God, is born from the friendship with Him, from the intimacy with the indwelling God, from the attentive listening to His voice. A prophet indeed is a mystic. Every true prophet is a mystic, and every genuine mystic is a prophet. The prophet challenges the mystic, and the mystic inspires the prophet. In the life and spirituality of Jesus, mysticism and prophecy form an inseparable whole. His compassion came from nourishing the divine experience he had within. Jesus' commitment to the prophetic style, united in deep contemplative stillness with his Father, he was saturated with the divine power, and he was doing his Father's will, only his Father's will. He had his deepest experience of his Father when he was touched by the grieving widow, when he met the paralytic at the pool, when he came across the lepers, the sick, and the wounded. In reaching out to people, Jesus shared the divine energy with them, and expressed it as compassion. Healing is mystic's call. Racial purity divided the Jewish society into different grades or ranks, whereas Jesus' compassion united and included them. The social rigidity of the structures of the society labeled and chased out many as outcasts and sinners. But they were the focus of Jesus' mission. He had a revolutionary practice of meal fellowship with outcasts and sinners. And these led him to the final confrontation with the religious political leaders and finally to his death on the cross. Religious commitment to a prophetic lifestyle. Religious are encouraged to develop a contemplative consciousness that leads to action. Action that is vitalized by an interior mystical life. Our mission, our ministry need mystery and a mystical consciousness and prophetic lifestyle. Our mission is contemplation in action, moving into the cave of the heart. We switch off inner streams of our thoughts and feelings. We soak ourselves in the deep intimacy of the divine and experience the outpouring of the divine energy into our hearts. And we reach out to others with a great sense of urgency. Mystical contemplation is essentially an experience of love. Their love becomes an intense passion. It makes them forget themselves, dedicate themselves to the service of others. Passion for God and a compassion for our brethren, especially for the poor and oppressed. When we are for the miserable and the marginalized, become the voice for the voiceless. And when we allow our hearts to be touched by the poor, we reveal the glory of God again and again and become the prophet of the time. Conclusion. In mystical contemplation, there is a sense of openness within us, with God, with the rest of humanity, with a cosmic nature that outshine each one's all other individual identity, separateness, and a division. This leads to a sense of integration, friendliness, universal brotherhood. Here begins to grow within us a sense of holiness, which arises with the awareness of God, God's presence. We realize we are the temple of God, rooted and grounded in the divine energy. Like the Good Samaritan, let us vibrate that energy as compassion and become the icon of the very heart of God's mercy. This witnessing presence of the consecrated will make a difference in the world today, and we become the most relevant to the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Princey, for your paper. Sister Princey's paper was an invitation to rediscover our contemplative consciousness. May I recapture some of her important points? First of all, she presented contemplative life as transcendence, going into one's own self, transcendence into the cave of the heart where we meet our God. Then she analyzed intimacy, contemplation as intimacy with the one residing within us. Intimacy with the one who is already there in your very being, in the cave of your heart. She characterized the contemplative consciousness of Jesus as his Abba experience. It was the Abba experience that gave shape to Jesus' own contemplative consciousness. Sister Princey, you had a very well prepared paper and you presented it very well, and we congratulate you on your presentation, and we put our hands together to congratulate you. Now we have Father George Kulangara to enlighten us on this topic. Father George Kulangara, CMI, is a scholar in philosophy with MPH from DVK, Bangalore, and MA and PhD from Catholic University of Leuven, Belgium. He teaches philosophy at DVK, Bangalore, Darshana Institute of Philosophy, Wardha, and such other institutes. He regularly writes scholarly articles on philosophical and allied themes. Besides teaching philosophy, he also teaches. He also preaches, retreats, and offers animation programs. He also served as the provincial superior of St. John's Province, Bijnor. Since 2017, he is serving as rector of Darshana Institute of Philosophy, Wardha. Dear Father George, we are eagerly waiting for your paper.
Thank you, Father George, for your kind introduction. Distinguished members of the SMRC General Body, dear sisters and brothers. Are you tired? No? Would you like to move a bit? Yes? With the silent permission from Saju, shall we take 1 minute maybe to stand up? Those of us who would like to stand up, stretch our hands. This is also contemplation. Yes. Yeah, contemplation in action, yes. If you're done, you may sit down, yes. Thank you. I'm asked to share my reflection on how best we can foster a spirit of contemplation in our formies, in our youngsters in the field of formation. Let me begin with a personal note. I studied in a Malayalam medium village school, like most others of my times did. And English was a subject for us from standard 4. When I exited the school 7 years later, after the SSLC examination, I do not think I had even 15 words in my English vocabulary. I do not think I had ever uttered a single sentence in English. What remained constant in our English classes from standard 4th to 10th was every English teacher religiously repeating the same mantra: present tense, past tense, future tense. I could not make any sense out of it. And my score, to be very honest, always hovered around 5 out of 50. And all those years I thought English was something from a different planet altogether. English squeezed out every bit of pleasant feeling from my school life. Then I joined the seminary and went to Uttar Pradesh. From the very next day, we started speaking English, although broken English. For the first time in our life, I understood. I realized that English was something to be spoken. It was a language to be spoken, not merely for study and exam. Years later, when I went to Goethe German Institute in Pune, what my venerable teacher did was to first make us speak German in the very first class, even before a single word in German was written on the board. To my mind, contemplation is to our youngsters today what English was to people like me in our school days. Contemplation seems, we need to be very honest, contemplation seems like something from a different planet altogether. It looks like an elite exercise for elite people like Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross. One can succeed in teaching a new language to our students, provided the teacher is able to convince the students that it is not merely for academic grades. Rather, it is useful in everyday life. It can be learned, and it will expand their world and their quality of life. Similarly, the first step in cultivating a contemplative spirit is to demystify contemplation. We need to take efforts to remove the misconceptions surrounding contemplation, that it is the privilege of a select group of great mystics, that it is beyond the reach of ordinary mortals like us. Secondly, in initiating our youngsters to the contemplative dimension of life, we need to have a very sympathetic understanding of the challenges they face. I emphasize sympathetic understanding because the challenges and the problems they face, our youngsters face today, are not of their making. They are only victims of a culture and system we have created for them. The challenges are too many. But now, for this session, I list out just 6 of them. Challenge number 1. Our youngsters today, maybe we too, are natural citizens of a virtual world. The natural dwelling place of the young generation today is the virtual world. They are born into and are surrounded by a world of food from Zomato and engaged with the images and characters from TV and social media. Technology draws our attention away from the present, from the here and now. Through our constant texting, forwarding, email checking, iPad viewing, and smartphone picture making, we are losing our ability to live in the present. Challenge number 2, selfie culture. Taking selfies is not something bad in itself, but when it defines our culture and the thinking and the orientation of our mind, our personality gets deformed. I reach a stage where I see only what I like to see. I hear only what I like to hear. And I remember things only in the way I like to remember them. When I put myself in the center of my world, and when I become the measure of all things, I am unable to discern right and wrong. Number 3, challenge number 3, formation understood as a formation for a career. The lived reality of consecrated life has evolved, whatever we may say otherwise. as theology, vision of consecrated life, etc. But the consecrated life that has come to be lived by each one of us has evolved to a stage where it has become a career and a profession. Naturally, then, the formies pick up the idea that formation is all about mastering some skills like in language, music, computer, public speaking, management, etc. 4. Seeking holiness and meaning in consecrated life through mere performance of sacraments. This was referred to by the two former speakers, also earlier in the day by Justice Queen Joseph. For many, holiness is merely the diligent performance of the sacramental rituals and prayers. In this, we commit the folly of drawing lazy satisfaction in being at the doorstep of experiencing the joy of the divine. This is the mediocre way of living spiritual life. The real danger here is that it leads us to the illusion that we are holy and perfect just because we are diligent and correct in spiritual exercises. The real joy of spiritual life eternally bypasses us. Challenge number 5. Dreaming to attain holiness through pastoral commitment. For many, information, contemplation and its joy is a future reality. It is not something for the present. It's a future reality arising out of a life of mission. So they would think, after I am through the stage of formation, and once I am out in the field of pastoral ministry, I'll offer my time, my energy, and my skills for making a real difference to the life of the people. Being a good shepherd for the people is an ideal that holds the maximum attraction for many formies in consecrated life. The problem is contemplation and the joy of spiritual life is something to be experienced only in the future. The last challenge, appeal of mistaken notion of prophetism. In many youngsters, there is a serious and well-meaning concern about the ills and the problems surrounding the church as well as religious congregations today. Many self-styled prophets, championing the cause of the renewal and reform of the church and consecrated life, turn out to be heroes for our youngsters. The problem here is there is a disregard for the true nature of prophetic call, namely that the prophetic criticism and action should first be addressed to the evil in myself. Now, what's the way forward? The way forward begins with demystifying contemplation. We need to demystify contemplation for adoption as a lifestyle. Idolizing great mystics like Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross and presenting them as the models to emulate mystifies contemplation and makes it look like an impossible way for people like us. It looks like the hard-earned privilege of a few spiritual giants. Contemplation needs demystification. True, anecdotal stories like Teresa of Avila, we have heard this many times. Sisters in the community of Teresa of Avila have seen her standing a few inches above the surface, above the ground, while seasoning, standing in the air while seasoning food in the kitchen. Stories like this, anecdotes like this, amplify the halo around people like her. But it also has a negative impact on us, making contemplation an ideal too high and too remote for ordinary people like us to even think of achieving. In fact, contemplation is like having a third eye, the eye that can perceive the divine in and around us, like the third eye of Simeon and Anna of the Gospel of St. Luke chapter 2. Apparently, Simeon and Anna are like misfits in the world, old, poor, confined to the temple, and uninvited to the celebrations in this world. Yet, when an equally poor and unexceptional looking babe was brought to them, they saw the joy of their life. Their hearts exploded in ecstatic joy. Contemplation begins, real contemplation begins with the ability to see the beauty and experience the joy in very simple and ordinary things around us. Contemplation is not chapel-centric. It should not be chapel-centric. Contemplation is experiencing the divine joy in small and ordinary encounters. Contemplation is seeing through the third eye, a reason to be happy, a reason to smile, to feel grateful, and to celebrate in the commonest and in the most ordinary places and situations. On the corridors, in the dining hall, in the gardens, on the streets, and even in the general compartment of the trains. Contemplation is possible for all of us. It can become our way of life. It can make every day and every moment of our life a celebration. For this, we need to pass through 3 doors. 2 doors to exit and 1 door to enter. The first door, exiting. Contemplation begins as attention and presence to this world, the world of people, animals, birds, trees, stones, rivers, etc. Therefore, we need to first exit the virtual world of the media and become residents of this real world. Once in this world, I'll begin to notice that I need to switch off that bulb, latch that banging door, close that leaking tap, feel the taste of food I eat, smile back and say hello to the one I meet on the corridor. In short, I need to be present here and now. For many youngsters, the mind is like an ever-flowing stream of consciousness, always on the move, never able to fix on something, attend to something for a short duration. Contemplation begins when I can stop by something, take notice of it, and dwell on it, experiencing the joy of its existence. Second door, the door of entry. Contemplation is living our everyday life, walking in the Spirit. This is having a transcendence in life that Sister Prince was referring to. The first step to transcendence is to be immanent in this world. This can be realized by quitting the style of living one's life lost in the virtual world. The next step is to cultivate a certain spirit of asceticism in life. Love for silence, mortification of the senses, sense of cleanliness, abstaining from useless chatter, spirit of healthy detachment in relationships, etc. These are not old-fashioned values. We need them even today. The most important part of this stage is the mortification of ego, where I undergo a decentering experience, moving away from a selfie culture and learning the art of being present to and listening to and caring for the other. At this stage, one is ready for the prompting of the Spirit and divine grace to fruitfully engage our mind and heart. Prayer becomes an experience transforming one's attitude, orientation in life, and lifestyle. Then the third door, the second exit. In the second exit lies the test of contemplation. Here, one exits, not exists, exit. One goes out of the comfort of the time of prayer and the comfort of the space of the chapel to reach out to others as a gift. There's two stages. Within oneself, the person undergoes a decentering experience, moving away from the selfie culture of one's obsession with oneself. And second stage, for others, I become a gift with my selfless nature, generosity of heart, and giving and forgiving spirit. This in itself is the test and confirmation of one's contemplative dimension in life. Transformation into such a nature is the goal of formation itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Father George, for your very nice presentation. Your paper was an attempt to demystify mysticism, to demystify contemplation. You rightly said, contemplation and mysticism are not just for the elite, but for the ordinary folks like us. Contemplation is presented sometimes as a high ideal. It is placed at a place too high for us to reach. But you said your paper made an through your paper you made an attempt to say that contemplation is the capacity to see the ordinary, to see the divine in the ordinary. For that, we need the third eye you suggested. It is the third eye that sees the joy in the ordinary. You invited us to live in the present, to live here at this place at this time. For this to happen, we need to exit from our selfie culture. When we are obsessed with ourselves, we lose in touch with the divine. When we exit our selfie culture, we enter into the mystic culture, the seeing of the divine in the ordinary. Father George, on behalf of the Assembly, I congratulate you on your presentation for enlightening us on the topic of mysticism and bringing it down to us, down to earth, so that we can access that high ideal. Dear brothers and sisters, let us give Father George a great applause. Now the floor is open for discussions. As far as Aju, what time? 20 minutes. 20 minutes for discussion.